500 years ago, they ruled the seas, not just the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, the Black Sea, the Indian Ocean, an empire that turned water into a highway of conquest. The other is the most powerful warship ever built, a floating city of steel, nuclear-powered, carrying an air force on its deck. One question, two fleets, one ocean, what happens? When the Ottoman Navy meets the USS Gerald R. 1538, the Ottoman Empire is at the height of its naval power. Under the command of Hayreddin Barbarossa, the most feared admiral in the world, the Ottoman fleet has just destroyed a combined Christian fleet at the Battle of Preveza. Not a battle, a massacre. Barbarossa commanded over 120 warships that day. The combined forces of Venice, the Papal States, and the Holy Roman Empire could not stop him. The Mediterranean was his lake. The Ottoman galley was the weapon that made this possible. Long, low, and fast, powered by hundreds of oarsmen working in perfect coordination. A single war galley carried up to 200 soldiers, dozens of cannons along its flanks, and a heavy ram at its bow designed to tear through enemy hulls at ramming speed. Speed was everything. The galley could reach 7 knots under oar, fast enough to close distance quickly, fast enough to outmaneuver sailing ships in calm conditions. And the Ottomans had 200 of them. 200 galleys, 40,000 sailors and soldiers, the finest naval commanders of the 16th century. For 100 years, no Christian fleet dared challenge Ottoman supremacy in the Mediterranean without paying a devastating price. They had mastered naval warfare as it existed in their world, but their world was about to get much larger. The United States Navy commissions its most advanced warship, the USS Gerald R. Ford, named after the 38th President of the United States, built at a cost of $13 billion, the most expensive warship in human history. It is not a ship, it is a city. Length, 337 meters, longer than 3 football fields end to end. Displacement, 100,000 tons. That is heavier than the entire Ottoman fleet combined. It is powered by 2 nuclear reactors. It does not need to refuel, ever. It can operate for 20 years on a single nuclear fuel load. On its deck, up to 90 aircraft, F/A-18 Super Hornets, F-35C stealth fighters, E-2D Hawkeye radar planes, helicopters, electronic warfare aircraft. The Ottoman fleet had cannons that could reach 500 meters. The F/A-18 carries missiles that reach 160 kilometers. And the Gerald R. Ford doesn't even need to get close. Its aircraft can strike targets 1,000 kilometers away. Its escort destroyers carry Tomahawk cruise missiles with a range of 1,600 kilometers. The entire Ottoman fleet could fit inside the Gerald R. Ford's flight deck with room to spare. Let's put them side by side. Firepower, Gerald R. Ford wins by a margin so vast it defies description. Speed, Gerald R. Ford wins. 30 knots versus 7 knots under oar. Range, Gerald R. Ford wins. Nuclear-powered versus human muscle. Numbers, Ottoman fleet wins. 200 warships against 1 carrier. And here is where it gets interesting. The Gerald R. Ford has one critical vulnerability, aircraft. Everything the Ford can do, it does through its aircraft. Without them, it is an extraordinarily expensive steel island. The Ford carries approximately 3,000 liters of aviation fuel per sortie. It has fuel reserves for extended operation, but fuel is finite. More importantly, ammunition. Each F/A-18 carries a limited number of missiles. Each strike depletes those reserves. Resupply in the middle of a 16th century ocean is impossible. And the Ottoman fleet has 200 ships, 200 targets. At some point, the math becomes uncomfortable. For this scenario, the Eastern Mediterranean, open water, a clear summer day. The Ottoman fleet knows something is coming. Barbarossa has seen the smoke on the horizon. That's not from fire, but from something else entirely. Something his scouts cannot explain. The Gerald R. Ford battle group holds position 200 kilometers away. The Admiral watches the Ottoman fleet on radar. 200 contacts spread across 40 kilometers of ocean. The battle begins at dawn. Barbarossa gives the order. 200 galleys begin to move, oars hitting the water in perfect unison. The sound carries across the Mediterranean like a drumbeat. From 200 kilometers away, the Gerald R. Ford launches its first strike package, 8 Fa-18 Super Hornets, armed with Harpoon anti-ship missiles and JDAM precision bombs. The Ottoman fleet never sees them coming. The first missile strikes the lead galley. The explosion is unlike anything the Mediterranean has ever witnessed, a shock wave that flattens the sea around it, fire that burns on the water itself. Barbarossa watches from his flagship. He has seen destruction before. He has burned cities. He has sunk fleets. He has never seen fire fall from a clear sky. But Barbarossa did not become the greatest admiral of his age by panicking. He signals. The fleet disperses, 200 galleys spreading across 40 kilometers, making themselves harder to target, harder to group, harder to destroy in a single strike. He does not know what he is fighting, but he knows how to survive long enough to find out. The Fa-18s make 3 passes. 30 galleys are destroyed. 15 more are damaged. 155 Ottoman warships are still operational. The strike package returns to the Gerald R. Ford to rearm, and this is where the mathematics begin to shift. Each rearming cycle takes time. Fuel is consumed, ordnance is depleted, the carrier's magazines are deep, but not infinite. Below, Barbarossa is adapting. He splits his fleet into 5 squadrons. Each squadron moves in a different direction. Some towards the carrier's last known position, some away, forcing the Ford's aircraft to cover more area, use more fuel, expend more ordnance per target. He cannot sink the Ford with cannons, but he can make it expensive. Strike Package 2 launches, then Strike Package 3. By the 4th hour of battle, the Gerald R. Ford has destroyed 80 Ottoman galleys. 120 remain, and they are closing the distance. Slowly, inevitably, the way the sea itself closes distance and with patience and weight. At 50 kilometers, the Ford's escort destroyers open fire with their 5-inch guns. At 20 kilometers, the phalanx close in weapon systems engage. At 10 kilometers, the last Ottoman galleys are close enough to see the carrier with the naked eye. Barbarossa stands at the bow of his flagship. He has lost half his fleet. The other half is still coming. At 5 kilometers, the Gerald R. Ford launches its final defensive strike. The remaining Ottoman galleys are torn apart by everything the battle group can bring to bear: guided missiles, naval guns, aircraft strafing runs. The last Ottoman galley sinks 3 kilometers from the Gerald R. Ford's hull. Barbarossa goes down with his flagship. The Gerald R. Ford wins, completely, decisively, without taking a single hit. But here's what history will record. The greatest naval commander of the 16th century, with 200 warships and 40,000 men, closed to within 3 kilometers of the most advanced warship ever built, with cannons that couldn't reach it, with oars against nuclear power, with 16th century courage against 21st century technology, and he almost made it uncomfortable. The Ottoman Navy versus the USS Gerald R. Ford, ancient mastery versus modern supremacy. The Ford wins every exchange, but the ocean remembers Barbarossa, because the greatest admirals in history are not measured by the battles they won. They are measured by the battles they should have lost and didn't. Not yet. Not